What was the greatest length you went to just to frick with someone? My stepbrother is a master prankster. My personal favorite is when he fricked with his uncle by sending him Christmas cards from a made-up couple with photos he found on the internet. Hope you and the kids are doing well. ETC love Bill and Amy. He also included details only someone close to the family would know, and even had his friend stop by their house when their son was playing outside and asked him to tell his dad that Bill stopped by. It got to the point where it was driving the uncle insane. He had no idea who this mystery couple was, because they didn't exist. A friend of mine, who is the polar opposite of his older brother when it comes to politics, started trolling his brother on the internet for fun. This began pretty much at dawn of the internet, and he's never stopped. From the time his brother started posting in the early 90s on message boards up through today, he has encountered the most virulent opposition to everything he says. Often, the oppositional posters will use his own words against him, pulling quotes from his posts that are years old, from message boards that don't even exist anymore. My friend just copies and saves his posts as he goes, says it's easy, kind of like his hobby. The brother has gotten freaked out and changed usernames several times, but my friend always finds him again, usually by simply asking his brother what his new username is, and picks it right back up. This has been going on for over 20 years. So, his brother is trapped in this epic, lifelong, deeply personal flame war online, and doesn't realize that his archenemy is also his kid's godparent. It's just so twisted. Meanwhile, in the creepiest experience thread, a poster talks about the 20-year saga of their obsessive online stalker. Roommates and I set all the clocks forward an hour, every single clock in the house, including the VCR. Our one buddy got up at 5 AM. Instead of 6 and went to work an hour early. At about 8 AM, we got a text, "You guys are buttholes." He was later promoted for being a good early worker. Sometimes, chances to frick with someone just fall in your lap after staying dormant for years. Here's my story. Many years ago I was at a house party with some high school friends on the other side of town. I was trying to get with this girl but she was having none of that. As I sat on an unfamiliar couch I overheard a guy I'd never met before describe an odd allergy he had to dairy products. When he drank milk, the normally non-visible birthmark he had over his left eye would darken and become noticeable. 5 years later I was attending a creative writing class at the university. The professor wanted us to do introductions, stating our name, what our field of study was and one interesting thing about ourselves. As my turn approached I started to get nervous. Suddenly my standard "I collect surf music from the 90s on vinyl record" line seemed not so interesting. As I looked around the room I saw the guy with the milk allergy. I was sure it was him. We had never met, but I still knew this quirky thing about him. When it got to me I introduced myself and told everyone that I had psychic powers. They pressed me to do a reading but I told them that my powers were odd and that I couldn't just read anyone, but that I would occasionally get flashes of information about strangers, revealing strange and usually an important fact about them. When pressed to perform I pointed at the kid I'd overheard years earlier and said, "I don't know what this means, but when you put milk on your cereal it looks like you have a black eye." The next day he turned completely white, mumbled "That's impossible," stood up and walked out of the class. Everyone else clammed up and refused to even make eye contact with me. I talked to the guy later that day and explained myself. He laughed really freaking hard. He kept my secret for the rest of the semester, and we worked together on a couple of projects. Everyone else freaked out and was afraid to talk to me, for fear I'd discover their darkest secret. So, in revealing myself to the original target of the prank, I fricked with the entire rest of the class for the entirety of the semester. Beautiful. Once in middle school our entire grade took a week-long trip that required a hotel stay. It was 4 of us to a room and we were unfortunate enough to draw a room on the side of the hotel that was under construction, so the scaffolding completely blocked any natural sunlight from entering the room. So at around 3 AM the last night, we finished watching some movie on the hotel TV and realized that one of our friends had fallen asleep. The 3 of us decided to change back into our daytime clothes and change the clock to 8 AM. We woke the kid up and yelled at him for oversleeping and told him to hurry up and get ready so we can get to the bus on time. He hastily packed his suitcase and after he hopped in the shower we changed the clock back and went to sleep. not a super long process but more effort than I usually take to frick with someone. As a young boy with an older brother who always tried scaring me or beating on me, I often thought of ways to frick with him indirectly. So one day I had the bright idea to cut the top of his deodorant off and replace it with cream cheese. I had to sculpt it on to make it look like the deodorant and even poke the little hole in the middle to make it look as real as possible. Then it was time for the waiting game. I knew it had worked when he came in my room a couple days later and beat the crap out of me. Worth it. In college, I sat down by my friend who was studying one day, noticed she had placed her keys on the table beside her and wasn't paying attention. She was going to be there for a while, so I grabbed her keys when she wasn't looking. We had a small hardware store just off campus, less than 2 minutes walk from where we were. Made like I was going to get a soda, ran to the hardware store and had them make a copy of her car key. Then I returned her keys to her unnoticed. For the rest of the year, whenever I passed by her car and knew she wasn't nearby, I would move the car over several spaces or turn it around in the parking spot. She really thought she was going crazy. My best friend was living in Berlin for 6 months during an internship. While he was away, I visited him once. I live in NL and was 16, so I couldn't afford to go more often. When I got back, I started a rumor that he had gotten really fat from eating curry sausage. Every time the trip or the friend came up in conversation, I would sneak it in somehow. Even weeks after he came back, the first thing people would say when they saw him again was, "Hey, you're not as fat as I thought you'd be." In my middle school, there was a kid who was sick during the first week of school. He was pretty popular the year before, and a lot of his friends joked that he hit puberty over the summer and got really hot. A lot of people believed him. People were disappointed when he came back. When I was living in my halls at university, we realized that our bathroom had a service hatch which connected to next door's bathroom where some of our friends lived. Over the course of a week, we figured out how to unlock the service hatch to their bathroom. Once we had done this, we waited for a day when we knew we were all in and then sent one of us next door to keep them distracted under the instruction to send a text message when everyone next door was in the main communal area. As soon as we got the text, we unlocked the service hatch. Someone jumped into the bathroom and locked the door from the inside to allow us time to unleash our plan, which was to fill the room up with balloons. I think we must have left about 1,000 in there, to the point that the door locker guy struggled to get out, and we worked at it for about 20 minutes. Once the room was filled, we unlocked the bathroom door and then quickly locked the service hatch. About 5 minutes later, we just hear screaming from the bathroom. Every so often for about a month, we would just leave 10-15 balloons in there in the early hours of the morning, so it would be a nice surprise for when they woke up. They found out after a month when one of us was drunk and gave the game away. For years, one of my main business competitors was a D-bag with a crappy British accent that he thought was charming. The C would try to poach my employees every year at a big industry trade show. I finally had enough and decided to have some fun with him. I got a whole bunch of my friends and colleagues to act very shocked and surprised when they saw him at the conference. Whenever they would see him walk by, they would call out his name loudly. Marvin. Not his real name, obviously. "I thought you were dead. I heard you had a heart attack last month, or last week, or a few days ago," just to leave this bit. Then when he would ask where they heard it, they would always be vague. Please 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 be vague. After 3 days of this, over and over, he was really getting pissy and wanted to know who had started the rumor. But his reaction got better every time it happened, and pretty soon people I didn't even know were having a go at him. From what I heard, 10 years later, he still has people come up to him and go, "Jesus, Marvin, you're alive." If he knew it was me, he'd probably shoot me. Frick you, Marvin. I catfished a coworker. He was kind of a douche and would talk about how many girls he was sleeping with. Nobody believed him. He went to a party the previous night and got hammered drunk. He didn't have my number, so I texted him pretending to be a girl he met at the party, telling him how handsome and interesting he was. He didn't quite remember me, so I described a girl that was at the party, but whom he didn't know. I couldn't look him in the face without laughing, so I did some work in the back storage room. For the next hour, he would run up to me to tell me what this girl he didn't remember was telling him. After him bugging me for a picture, I sent him a picture of myself with a crap-eating grin on my face. He was so mad. Even the grumpy managers thought it was hilarious. Should have sent a dong pic. Me and 3 other guys were part of a cleanup crew at a beef packing plant back in the 70s. We decided like idiots to do some acid and make work a lot more fun. While they were off cleaning another area, I took a cow's head that had been cleaned off most of the meat and managed to make an opening big enough to put it on over my head. When they came back, I hid behind a meat locker and ran at them screaming MOOOOO when they walked by. I don't think I ever laughed so hard in my life watching them trying to run away on that slippery floor. They looked like 2 cartoon dogs stuck in place. Holy frick, I could not imagine dosing around a bunch of cow corpses. That's pretty metal. I went back home for a funeral, and while back I spent some time getting close to my cousin. She asked if I knew any guys that might be good for her. I actually knew just the right one. So I introduced her to a good friend and they hit it off immediately. Now I should mention my cousin is kinda kinky. Visiting her apartment, it was hard to miss the straps on her bed. So once her and my friend started hitting it off, gears started to turn as to how I could use this to prank my buddy. Rewind to a few years ago before I left my hometown. My friends and I all play Magic the Gathering, and as a side game we play what we call the Wizardrix game. Wizardrix is a terrible magic card that no one wants, so we would sneak it into each other's stuff as a goofy prank. The current champ was my buddy, who got me by sneaking a Wizardrix into my pack of cards I had bought while I was at work. By steaming the bottom to loosen the glue so he could remove the rare and replace it with a Wizardrix and reseal it. It worked and pranked me perfectly. Jumped back to him and my cousin. They started sleeping together, so I asked her a favor. The day I was leaving to go home, I gave her a Wizardrix and told her to give it to him mid-coitus, preferably in a way he couldn't reject it. So as I'm boarding the plane, my phone goes off with a text. My buddy is letting me know she just shoved a Wizardrix in his mouth while he was tied to the bed and she was atop him. Now all my friends are paranoid. I'll find equally fricked up schemes to mess with them. And you are my favorite. Twisted but subtle. Back in AOL Instant Messenger days, I pranked a buddy of mine. Created a new AIM account and screen name, one that I wouldn't be tied to. Then I started messaging his account while running my own AIM in a different instance, meaning me and my prank account were both online. I made sure that when I typed using the prank account to have different tone of speech and different personality altogether. Really, he began messaging me that this weird dude has been talking to him. This began an over hour-long session of him being suspicious, me trying to look up information on his screen name, and he even had me try messaging him as well. Eventually it all grew and culminated into a party chat with me, my prank self, and him. Me and him basically arguing with prank me over prank me, saying I was going to hack his PC. When enough was enough and the time was right, I started parroting everything the prank account said. He got confused, and then I started typing part of one sentence with prank account and finishing it with mine. When he caught on, he face palmed straight through the earth and into China. I take off my robe and wizard hat. I grew up with an alcoholic, abusive father, so as a child I was always rebelling in sneaky little ways. One of my favorite ways of fricking with him was making him breakfast when he was hungover. This started when I was 9. The only thing I could make were Bisquick biscuits, so I'd make a batch but throw terrible crap into his. I'd put tons of salt, pickle juice, bits of wet cat food, etc. The genius thing was that I'd make regular ones and bake them on the same sheet. So, they'd come out of the oven and I'd eat the 2 good biscuits straight off the tray. He'd grab the crappy ones and eat them. He always made faces like they were terrible and ask me what was in them. And I'd look at him like he was crazy and say they were normal while I ate the secret good ones. He always thought it was because he was still so fricked up from the night before, so he'd just eat them with the most miserable expression on his face. TLDR. This is how supervillains are made. I'm torn between how sad I am and how victorious and vindicating small things like that are in such crappy houses. Go you. In retaliation for a prank played upon on one of my group of friends at the time by the landlord of a pub, owner of a bar for US folks, we systematically stole glasses from the bar over a period of several months, just a few now and then. It was a big place, so not really enough to be noticed amongst the usual losses and breakages. The number of glasses soon mounted, and there were over 300 by the time we returned them all surreptitiously on one night. They had beer swilled in them to make them look used and were placed on various tables around the place. I am assured that there was much puzzlement, and it was most amusing at the end of the night when the staff attempted to put the glasses away. As a former barback responsible for cleaning dirty glasses after closing, I can assure you this would be the most upsetting thing imaginable after a 10-hour shift. Well done. Years ago I lived with 2 other guys. This was in Los Angeles, and all 3 of us were working in the television industry as low-level production assistants on different television shows. One day we realized that all of our shows had hired the exact same production designer. It's not uncommon for people like him to work on multiple shows at a time, and this guy would spend 1 or 2 days a week on each show. We decided to have some fun with him. The next time I saw him in the office, I chatted him up and then casually asked if anyone had ever told him he looked like Donald Trump. He got a little confused and said no. I insisted it wasn't an insult, just that I could see a little Trump when he made certain expressions. He laughed it off. A couple days later he showed up to one of my roommate's office where my friend pulled something similar. In passing, he mentioned how much he looked like Donald Trump. Apparently the guy laughed and said although he'd never heard it or seen it before, someone just the other day had said the same thing. My friend just agreed, saying, "Yeah, you've definitely got some Trump going on." Finally, about a week later, when my other roommate saw him, he pulled the exact same move. The great thing here is that the guy just nodded and said, "Yeah, I've been getting that a lot lately." There was never a reveal. I haven't seen or worked with the guy since, and I doubt the others have, either. One of them moved back to Chicago a short time later. So yeah, some guy out there thinks he looks like Donald Trump. He does not look like Donald Trump. So, this will get buried and no one will see it, but here we go. Where I work, we use ID cards to log into our computers. As a custom in the shop, if someone leaves their card overnight, we take it and do something with it. Usually it's tape it somewhere in the office or freeze it in a block of ice. I got bored with the usual games, so I decided to up the ante. One co-worker, we will call Jeff, left his card one night, so I made a scavenger hunt with riddles to the next clue that led him around the office and across the building, even out across the quarter-mile-long parking lot. The whole shop got in on the action to help Jeff find his card. A few weeks later, Jeff leaves his card again while he is out of town for a week. Now I would have figured running around the building solving riddles like a child would have taught Jeff a lesson. But no, now I have to step up my game. It took me the whole week to come up with a plan and make it happen. My first stop was to FedEx to use their copiers. I talked to the manager and explained my plan. After taking a moment to laugh, he says that they aren't allowed make color copies of IDs, but I can use the copier to do so myself. He even goes to the back and finds some high quality shiny photo paper for me to use. So, I scan and print a copy of my ID. Next I cut out the copy and glued it onto Jeff's card. Then just to make it look right, I used a screen cover for a phone to give it the right gloss look. Jeff was due back in the office Monday morning, so Friday night before I left I stuck my card in the card reader and went home. On a side note, I have never left my card at work, so the guys have been waiting for it for years. Monday afternoon, I work swing shift. I come into the office and the team comes out to greet me. Jeff presents me with a block of ice with my ID in it. I look at it, grin, walk over to my desk and log in with my ID. Then Jeff finally realizes where his card is, yells out, "Goddamn IT, Viorin." The rest of the shop is dumbstruck and vows not to get on my bad side. TLDR, I tricked a co-worker to freeze his own ID card into a block of ice. So far my favorite. Anyone can mess with someone. A true genius makes someone mess with themselves. I had a friend doing 30 days in county jail for his second DUI. I learned from a mutual friend, who was previously incarcerated for the same thing, that you can send inmates books if they are shipped directly from Amazon. I sent a number of male erotica books. I chose the books with the most colorful covers I could find. Twist, they helped your friend discover first his true self, and then true love. He is trying to find the courage to open up and admit to you how grateful he is. For 2 years I've been telling my girlfriend that narwhals are photoshopped and don't actually exist, just to make her mad. She still thinks I don't believe in them. Not sure if this fits here, but I guess it's the longest I've fricked with someone. It would be even better if someday you two go to an aquarium or something and see a narwhal and you caused a huge fuss about how cruel it is that they would perform surgery on their dolphins to give them horns. A few years when Skype was just starting off, they offered free calling in the US for 1 year. That's when me and a few buddies at it doing prank calls. We would look up common last names on white pages in the dirty South, call them claiming to be Comcast and saying they had outstanding charges for P-videos, backdoor SIV, Afro S3 etc. Well, one night I looked up a common last name in Alabama and that's how I met Alonzo. At first I pulled the whole skit I normally do and his only response was yup, in a very southern accent, to everything I said. After about 20 minutes talking to this man we found out he wasn't right in the head and felt bad. We ended up talking to him for 3 hours before we had to go to sleep and killed the call. Since then we've been calling him just to talk to him. I call him on his birthday every year and tell him happy birthday. He has no idea who I am, but he's always excited to talk to me. Sorry this doesn't relate to the question, but I thought I'd throw a positive note out there. I made a fake poker account acting like a hot female to get chips from rich men. I stopped after getting hit on so much and realizing what kind of monster I had become. My dad is a caretaker for old people in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He was doing work in an old Catholic monastery with really elderly monks and my brother and I were there at work with him. One of the monks was deaf in one ear and I would realistically meow like a cat for hours. He could never tell what direction it was coming from. Meow, hello, meow, meow. WHO is that hello, mew. God damn it. Backstory, I had a random college roommate that was a real creep, a total butthole, and a crappy person. Our dorm was like a 4-room apartment, 2 doubles and 2 singles. He was in a single, and while the rest of us knew each other before moving in, he was a random placement. He was a total pervert. We threw a party one of the first weeks. He stood near his door the whole time just watching everyone. Finally noticed he had a camera, and had been taking pictures all night, not participating in the party, just sitting there taking pictures. A couple of days later I asked him to borrow it to take a picture of a bike I was going to sell online, before camera phones were decent, and said alright, I take the pics, go to upload to my PC, and see all the pictures from the party. Every single one was just a full zoom on a girl's butt or chest, nothing else. Never confronted him about it, but after that, and all the creepy dickhead stuff he did on top of it meant we didn't get along. Everyone else in my dorm took it upon themselves to frick with him, but I think I took it to another level. He was ritualistic about his bedroom. The door was always locked. Even if he went to make something to eat, he locked his door behind him while he was in the kitchen. It was really odd, and we thought it was just because he didn't like us. He never allowed anyone in his room for anything, but there was a large space between the bottom of the door and the carpet, maybe 1.52 inches. So, I took a frisbee, turned it upside down, pee in it, and froze it. Small refrigerator in my room that was used for nothing else at this point. I would pop this pee disc ice cube out of the frisbee when he went to one of his 4-hour classes, and slide it under his door, into the middle of his room. He would come back to a giant wet patch of pee in the middle of his room, and have no idea how it got there. He started accusing all of us, obviously, but everyone kept their cool. He started doing all kinds of crap with securing his door when he left, but still there would be a ring of pee in the middle of his floor when he got back. He never did figure out how it happened. I am sure he still thinks about it from time to time. 10 years later. TLDR. Don't be a creeper, I will pee on your bedroom floor without ever stepping foot in your bedroom. The good old pee puck. Good work. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.